It seems like things are maybe ending with my wife or myself as a man. I'm turning a page into a new chapter of who I am, my understanding, my philosophical understanding of life, relationship, masculinity. And it feels like an ending is happening. I'm grieving. I may be sad or I may be joyous, depending on what's happening with my wife, with me. How can I look at this? How do I celebrate and keep a positive mindset regardless of what's happening? Well, we're going to talk about a clip from Jordan Peterson today. Jordan Peterson was on Lewis Howes's podcast. We'll have a clip from that. We've got some new keynotes to share, Cynthia and I do, and a new way to approach thinking about this. So welcome to the C Note Show, gentlemen. We want to learn how to love and lead with Mojo like a king, because she wants safety and inspiration and sexual leadership in relationship with you. We want to avoid mistakes and solve deep marriage problems. So our topic of today is celebrating endings, celebrating them whether they feel good or whether they feel bad. Because as I think you all are aware, at least my experience is sometimes one day they feel good, next day they feel bad, and that can shift. Or something that happened years ago, our perspective on it now, we can see it in a new way, a new light that's grown our wisdom, that's grown our perspective. And so it may have felt horrible, terrible, tragedy in the moment, but we can look back on it and be grateful for it. So where is the line of an ending and a beginning? Well, we determine that. Sometimes there's a gavel. Sometimes there's a gavel that swings that determines that, or a lock, a key in a lock that determines that. But often we don't see an actual finish line or a starting line. We get to delineate that. We get to choose when we close the book or open the next book or turn the page. And often we feel sort of trapped in our circumstance, let's say, peering out the window to the depth or the tragedy that we see out the window. This young boy, I would imagine, wants to be outside, but it's raining and he can't be outside. He can't be with his friends. He can't go play. It's muddy in the playground. It's muddy where he wants to ride his bike. And so he's sad about that. He's thinking about what he cannot do. He doesn't have awareness or wisdom of let's say, a man that's been through much more, that has perspective on life, perspective on what's happening. And so what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the window that's right in front of us, the sadness and tragedy and grief that's very real that we may be facing now, whether it's because of something with a child or your relationship or career or feeling lack of purpose, right? What are we focusing on? And if we're focusing on 2 inches in front of our face, well, we can't focus on, by definition, what's beyond that. We can't see what's beyond that. We don't know what's beyond the pane of glass or what potential opportunity is next. So part of moving into celebration of an ending and deciding for yourself when there's a delineation of an ending, of a beginning, you can move beyond that. You don't have to stay stuck where you are. I want to share in a different way, because I think y'all are interested in this and enjoy this. Cynthia and I were talking about this earlier. So if I look beyond the surface level of relationship in and of itself has levels. And we use this terminology similar to David Data. And there's level 1, level 2, level 3 of relationship. And I can certainly relate to having a more surface level relationship when I was younger, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to lead into something deeper. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And so let's outline this here very quickly. Level 1 is the surface, what you and she want to be seen or appreciated within a relationship. What's on the surface? Each other's body, her body, money. You know, as a man, if you make money, it's something that her, quote, human animal wants to feel safe and secure with your providership, right? That's a surface level, very ancient instinctual drive. And yours is for her youth, for her body, for what you can see. Or maybe it's for power. The next level of relationship is you want to be seen your intellect, your mind, each other's intellect, each other's mind. And there's much more verbal compromise happening. You're discussing paying bills. You're discussing intimacy. You're discussing parenthood, which a lot of that is necessary. But if you're discussing intimacy and what you have is surface level appreciation of body, and then, okay, this is the kind of orgasm I want to have. Okay, this is the kind of orgasm I want to have. You're not yet moving into what I didn't even know was available, which is level 3 of relationship. What's seen is your soul, each other's heart, the divinity that can flow through the two of you, through intimacy, connection, and sex. You could call it spirit. You could call it divinity. I like to say seeing each other's soul, seeing each other's heart. So that's a deeper way. That's a way to celebrate depth. It's not just the pane of glass immediately in front of us of her body and your money. It's not just the verbal compromise and understanding brain to brain, sort of masculine to masculine, as we talk about. It's understanding polarity, the level 3 of seeing her feminine soul and heart, and her seeing your masculine soul and heart, and flowing divinity and spirit through the two of you. So before we bounce open into discussion, I want you to punch into the chat, punch a 1 into the chat if you feel like you're facing some type of turning of the page, some type of potential ending, whether it's in relationship or the way you used to be. So you're being a different man now, or turning a page in your professional life, or in the brotherhood. I heard that there's a retreat happening this coming weekend that's celebrating endings. So punch into the chat if you feel in any kind of capacity you're facing a turning of the page. I'd love to chat with you guys here in a moment. So let's go to about a 2-minute clip from Jordan Peterson. This is Jordan Peterson shares how to heal from emotional trauma. So if you'd like to find this entire clip or the entire podcast, you search Lewis Howes, Jordan Peterson shares how to heal from emotional trauma. I'm going to share about a 2-minute clip of exactly, in my opinion, a powerful section of, well, what do you actually do? How do you get new perspective on quote unquote trauma?
What your brain wants from you in relationship to a traumatic memory is indication that you're no longer vulnerable to the same problem. That's what memory is for, right? You remember something bad and you process it so that you change your interpretation or your behavior or the situation or whatever you can change so that it isn't going to happen in the future. And if you do that thoroughly, you'll generally let yourself rest.
You have the memory to protect yourself from it happening.
Well, that's the purpose of memory in general. You make sense of your past behavior so that the good things that happen to you can be duplicated and the bad things can be avoided. It's not to make an objective record of the world. It's to make a functional map of the world that you can apply to the future. And so
how do we let that go? How do we disassociate something that happened a year ago, 10, 20 years ago, that is no longer happening, but seems to be triggering us?
Oh, it's very difficult. Well, I would say, one of the things you need to develop, if you've had an experience like the one you had, perhaps, because I don't know the details, you probably need a theory of malevolence. You need an explanation. It's like, how could a person do that? Well, you have to have
What if the explanation isn't good? They were just a bad person.
Well, then you need a philosophy of bad. You need a philosophy of evil. You have to understand it so that you're no longer a victim of it. Because otherwise you can't put the event in a context.
Right.
And sometimes that means the development of a real philosophical sophistication. And that can help because then you can start to separate out malevolence from benevolence, because maybe you're afraid of any intimate relationship now because it's been contaminated with that and everything's fuzzy and foggy. And so you need to understand the person who did that, at least to some degree, so that you can separate that person out from all the other people around you that you encounter in situations that might be reminiscent of it. So you felt vulnerable, perhaps you felt ashamed. All those things have to be gone through. What do you think when you're ashamed? What elicits that? What are the eliciting cues? What do you think when that happens? All of that has to be taken apart. I said in this Beyond Order book that, if you have a memory older than about 18 months that still bothers you, right? It's still got emotional.
Okay, of course, the whole clip is phenomenal. So again, if you want to search that, Lewis Howes, Jordan Peterson, how to heal from emotional trauma. So he's talking about when we're so close to it and we don't have an understanding of the larger landscape, that we need to zoom back out and start to understand the why. Why did we feel vulnerable? Why do we feel vulnerable now? Why do we have the emotions that we do now? And not to stay in victim, not to stay in, oh, poor me, not to stay in little boy. So Cynthia, what does it feel like when a man is still in victim, let's say? Certainly, right? So you and I met in 2016. And prior to that, we had times of being single, of course. So what was it like when you ran across a man who hadn't moved forward into understanding the philosophy of what happened? In other words, it's still an open wound. It's not a healed scar. Or in your women's groups, your professional groups, where you speak with other women and you see them speak about you speak with them about men that haven't moved forward, they still seem to be defensive. It's still an open wound. What is that like when you encounter, or those other women encounter a man that's like that hasn't made sense of this yet?
Yeah, and I would say, gosh, all of us have some wounds somewhere that haven't been perfectly worked through yet. So that's just a human condition. It's the journey. And I specifically remember example of dating a man who was very much in the wound still of, and not realize and not having any frame around his particular relationship with his mom. And because of that, it was almost like an egoic part of my feminine that came out, that somehow, since he can't fix himself, something must be fixed. Maybe I need to fix him, or he needs to join something or read a book to be fixed. Because deep down inside, the discomfort of not trusting his masculine ran so deep, because if he couldn't see this part of himself, even if it was not perfectly worked out, if I thought I knew his kingly eye wasn't on that, it put me in high alert that somehow I need to have a kingly eye on that. And my bend of feminine is I might want to like heal and fix. Another woman might experience that as just so angry and frustrated, especially if she experiences her partner acting as if everything's all figured out, where she can feel and know that there's something not being touched in on without awareness.
So how does a man come across where he feels like he's hiding it? If he's acting as if it's fixed or it's not a problem, but you're seeing under the surface? Or is he shut down? Does he come across in a certain way? What are the, let's say, symptoms or indicators for you about that?
And it's so interesting to talk about the energetics of things, feeling it as a woman, because I know women, we have our own energetics that you pick up on. I would say when a man is just kind of shut down a part of his life, it can actually feel like his body is shut down, and it's a non-entity in communication or sharing or even sexuality. And so all she can feel is your head energy and not your heart energy. And that can feel like she might distrust that or have disdain, or even can be an exact turn off for her sexually, because she feels like you're not fully present in your body and needing to push something down that brings up a lot of unease for the feminine.
Yeah, thank you. Let's certainly open it up to you guys. So you have a question of something Cynthia just said there about shutdown, or a woman not being able to feel deeper into you? Or are you looking at an ending that you're trying to celebrate? You're trying to make sense of it. Unmute yourself. Come on in. Go for it.
All right. So I totally, the Jordan Peterson thing struck a chord in the fact that my wife was wounded in all these ways from me, and I didn't even know it. And she just kept them to herself over the years, and they became, what he was talking about, these things. And she's got memory, not 18 months, but 18 years. And they're vivid memories. So it's really challenging to kind of like go through these things. And I get maybe one every couple weeks to I'm like, oh my God, that really? Like I got another one yesterday. Like I let the plants die when she was gone for 10 days this summer. And it was like, oh my gosh, really? Like hard to believe. From my perspective, like that was what you're concerned about, was the plants dying. I'm keeping our 3 children alive and the house from falling down while you're gone. And that's great that you're gone doing your things. But nonetheless, I realized that there were times, and many times in our history, that I wasn't as emotionally available to her as I could have been, and I wasn't as present and didn't focus on only her when we were talking. And I'm letting that guy die. I'm letting that guy go. He's on his way out. It's hard to get rid of him sometimes, but she and I talked about this, that guy is dead. I'm not that guy anymore, because I've realized the error of how that makes you feel.
Yeah. Thanks for getting us started. Certainly. So Cynthia, what's your impression? I'm curious of the plants dying. I'm taking care of the rest of the kingdom here. And some of your herbs, some of your plants dying, not that big of a deal. First of all, what is it like for a woman when her plants die? And then if he approaches it that way, which I think probably handled it more smoothly than I just said. What's your initial impression, please?
It's such a good, incredible example. And you really taught me a lot of the groundedness of masculinity, who's taking back and looking at the situation, going, the house didn't burn down, the kids are fine, we can buy new plants. In the feminine, I can feel like almost like a grief in her, like all of me is not being held, and that grief, I think she tries to overcome that by actually getting really spiteful and demanding of, how can you not be in charge of all the things that I'm in charge of? But what really it is a more of a wounding of, maybe I just can't let go and really trust the king in my life, and that has nothing to do with the present situation and the reality of plants. That has everything to do with something that she hasn't resolved from long ago, that's just happening to be triggered by something as trivial and the unnecessary details that sometimes women attach to that's their own way of kind of numbing down and holding themselves back from really completing certain energies and emotions.
So how that came up was, I was listening to a podcast, and there was an analogy that everyone's heard where it's like, your relationship is a beautiful tree at the beginning, but if you don't water it and nurture it, over time it withers and dies. And that's kind of what, and I just kind of, we were talking about the podcast or whatever, and I mentioned that part of it. And that she's like, that's how I felt when I came home from the 10 days being gone, was that, I had just bought those plants and I came home and they were dead. And that's how, like, I felt our relationship is gone. And I'm like, oh, ouch.
Yeah. So in that moment, I'm curious, did you just resonate with her? Did you, agree that it was sad? How did you handle it?
I don't know if I handled it the right way, but I said, really? I didn't even know there were new plants there. And I didn't know that was on the list of things that I needed to, protect. And it couldn't have come at a worse time in terms of, my work. And, I was crazy busy, and I had to hire somebody in her absence to handle the kids. And so, like, the lowest thing on my rung was keeping the plants alive. But had I known, it would have, it was a metaphor for, and this is really what I said to her. I'm like, had I known it was a metaphor for our relationship, keeping those plants alive, well, they would have gotten more water and more plant food than any plant has ever gotten. And it was like, and she's gone this week for another trip, and that's great. And she wrote me a list, which I think is a sign. And I've got all the things on the list, and I double checked to make sure everything on the list was covered. And that was helpful for me.
Can I dive into this for a minute? Are you cool with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So there's two concepts there. There's two teaching concepts there. You and I work together. Of course, we run groups as well. We do one-on-ones as well. And I love these questions. So there's concepts from the book, for instance, No More Mr. Nice Guy, where we stop defending ourselves. We stop explaining. And I could say that in a different way. When we defend ourselves, when we explain, it's really this, I'll use this graphic again that I showed a bit earlier. It's really either we're talking about the money around something, we're concerned about the power dynamic that's happening, or we're trying to, let's say, intellectualize it or make a compromise or see in her mind, which again, talking at the level of brain to brain is often kind of masculine to masculine. And so we're trying to justify to her mind why we handled something that way, as if you might talk with another man. Like, oh, I was, keeping the family alive. Who cares about the plants? Not a big deal. And so when you talk about, oh, well, this is why, and this is why, okay, it's intellectualizing it. And let me ask you a question. It's not a setup question. It should be pretty straightforward now at this point from what I was saying. So if you were to address her pain about the plants at the level 3, at the soul level, at the heart level, where she's saying, oh, this is a metaphor, right? What might you say instead of defending or explaining yourself?
I can understand how you might feel that way. That's not the way that I would ever intend to make you feel. And I'm so sorry. I mean, I think that probably would be a better way to go about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and be honest with me. What's the difference? What's going on in your mind or in your body when you say it that way versus the explaining yourself, defending yourself? What is it? How's the feeling different?
It's a feeling of empathy versus a feeling of defensiveness. And so that, like that's what I'm learning, and that's what I think we've had issue with for a long time. Both ways is kind of like showing that empathy that's maybe required. That's required for a more whole relationship. And I don't know. Is that the right answer?
So this isn't
I can say that
math.
in this forum. I can say that in this forum. I feel
Yeah,
comfortable
yeah.
saying. Is that the right
Right.
answer?
Right.
Because I still need the
This
answers. I don't have all of them,
No,
obviously.
that's good. That's good. This isn't exactly an engineering or a math problem. It's not like, okay, I ask you what's 1 + 2 and you say 3. Is that right? It's more art. Right? There's definitely a foundation of what we're teaching, these levels of relationship. Okay, but there's no perfect answer. And let me ask Cynthia. So is his answer right, Cynthia? Is he right? Did he do good? Is he a good boy?
Well, I don't even, what I'm feeling right now is your soul, because you're kind of chuckling at this with us. And so even the feminine in me doesn't even hear the actual, oh, was it A + B = C? Did he do the C right? I heard your soul and your gentle chuckle with it. And that's what I feel very pulled to. And to me, that's the like, yes, whatever that was the yes.
Yeah, and we had a situation like this before, like a metaphorical type of situation. Like we're living in this house, and there just happened, it was in the fall, and the mice came in, and they chewed up one of her really, a dress that had special meaning. It wasn't anything super crazy special, like expensive or anything. It was just a dress that had some meaning to her, and it was just one of those things where like it had all kinds of. It wasn't about the dress. It was about everything behind the dress and the memories and all of that. And that I didn't protect her from, a tiny little mouse that chewed on her dress and ruined it. It was ruined. And so, but I feel like it's kind of like it's attached to a bigger thing that I'm, discovering that in a very painful way I've been lacking for her, and I'm working my hardest to sort of like express that to her in an emotional and sort of like from the bottom of my soul type of way. And so far she's hearing me and she's understanding, but not that I need perfect reciprocity, but it's one of those where it's like, ooh, can I get something, like can I get something back? Like, yeah, I feel you, I understand. And it's hard to get that back. And so we're still working on it.
Sure, of course. Yeah, thanks. So, of course, as a man, we can't just play defense forever and look back and think, oh, I should have protected her dress from the mouse. Now I should feel like the worst piece of shit in the world. Okay? It's a symptom of what, as you were saying, it's a symptom of what's previously not been happening. It's a symptom of her feeling like her soul hasn't been seen. And by the way, or any other man, your soul may not have been seen along the way. Your heart may not have been seen along the way either. And so what else would you add saying there, and not always playing defense as a man?
I mean, I really appreciate that your wife does think in metaphor and that she can share with you deeper what's beyond, it's because this dress meant something to me. If you're feeling like you have to be in the defensive stance all the time, and no matter what critter comes in the home or what, maybe she's done with plants and now she's collecting small figurines at the top of the fireplace that the cat knocks down. The constant stance of I have to protect her from feeling negative emotions in the moment and then feeling negative emotions about our relationship will feel to her like a lot of uncertainty and actually like you're emotionally absent, which sounds the opposite of what she's really wanting. And women don't grow by being protected from all the things that could happen. And they don't build trust in you by having you always there every moment, catching the saucer before it hits the floor. They heal, and their trust is exemplified when in the moment you can hold space for the emotion that this is bringing up and you're okay with it. she might be sharing about the dress and go into in our relationship, I feel like you haven't been there protecting me. It's what she's desiring to be heard is that, oh, you feel like I haven't been there, and that's grief and that's sadness and pain, but not to have it fixed or prevented ever again, because that's an impossible task. And we could have a situation where the mouse choose the dress, or the mouse is going to choose the dress, and you protected it from happening. And like, hey, honey, that I did this. And she'd be like, oh, okay, thank you. Surface level. Or we could have a situation where the dress got ruined and the pain level by level that she's able to share with you and be heard and seen and understood. And that's the evolution of a woman through her heroine's journey. That's what needs to happen to have true flow in her life. And the other is just trying to keep everything in close Tupperware containers that never works. Life always leaks out.
That's beautifully said. Yeah. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Come on in.
So my wife and I have come to the agreement that we're going through, it's called collaborative divorce, or it's a form of mediation. And we're at step 3 of 5. And it's basically proving to the point, after all the steps we did, that she didn't want to stay married. And I said, that's fine. I'll lead this divorce. So I'm leading a divorce that I intentionally originally didn't even want. I know, I get the religious component in me, and I know that she and I could make it if we both wanted to with God's help. But that's not the choice she wants, and what path she wants to follow. So I love her enough to let her go, to let her down this path, but I don't want to stay stuck in the limbo land thing. And that's part of the reason why I'm leading this divorce. So I guess I'm celebrating that limbo land is coming to an end. I let it be in limbo land while we were trying to work on things, and I was trying to accept her for who she is, but she was not going to move off of, let's stay separated but not divorced, and you live your life and I'll live my life, but we're married on paper, and I'll stay on your health insurance. So, that bothered me a little bit. Like, she wanted the logistical benefits, but not the relationship part of the marriage. But I guess I'm celebrating that I'm okay with it. I've let it go. I've learned to be, what's the word I want to say, released, or what's the other term I want to use? To let her go, to be on my own, and not try to be counting in the back of my mind whatever little small part it would be of, could this work out? If anything, though, with doing this, I think she feels a little bit more free, and she's willing to, she tells me stuff and talks to me about stuff in more detail than she would have a year, 18 months ago. But I think it's because she feels free, like he's not trying to make this marriage work, so I can open up to him more. It's weird, man. And even this weekend, we took our middle kid to his first graduated college in May, and we took him down to Washington, D.C. from Pittsburgh to move into his apartment. She and I went together. And one of the other kids said, his age kid that was helping us move in, he goes, you two are getting divorced? Could never have been told the way you two get along with each other. So I guess I'm celebrating an ending that's a necessary ending, because I needed to no longer be stuck in limbo land.
Yeah, I hear you. So let me ask, is something confusing for you now that you'd like to ask a question about? Or what are you celebrating in your growth and wisdom for who you are as a man through this whole process?
I think in part 2, celebrating the growth of where you and Steve and Jeff and Dennis have all helped me grow to, that I needed to figure out way back in the book of No More Mr. Nice Guy, and what's the other one? Hold On to Your Nuts, of learning to say, these are my values. This is what my operating principles are. This is what I live up to. This is the man I am, and not try to placate her or give in on some so that she'd be happy. That's who I am. And that's who I was before I met her. And to say, this is who I am, and accept me for who I am fully. And if that's not what the path you want to go on, it's not the invitation you want to accept, then okay, let's undo this. And that's okay. But it also gives me the freedom to move on where the time comes to meet somebody new. I don't have anything lined up or anything like that. But I feel morally, I don't want to say available once this divorce is over to be able to do that. I've had many people try to set me up on dates. I'm like, whoa, I'm still married. Let me get through this, and we'll talk about that later. One guy here, I love this. One guy goes, but she'll be gone by then. I go, then okay, whatever. Then she wasn't for me. Don't worry about it, dude. If she's got a clock, then I don't want to be a part of a time clock, a schedule, I should say. But yeah. Right.
Yeah. I appreciate your calm, clear approach to this, of course, knowing yourself, your values, your morals, as you were saying. I appreciate that. Certainly. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your story. Absolutely. Yeah, please.
The video did stroke a chord here. When the relationship ended, the way the relationship ended, who created trauma, right? And I had to go through a process of understanding who this person that I married is, right? Because it was really strategic the way it happened, right? I don't blame her for ending the relationship. I had issues that I would need to work on. She had issues that she needs to work on. But I blame her still today for being so egocentric, so yeah, being so coward in the way she ended things. We're back together, obviously, but I'm still with this hurt of the way things ended, and I don't know what to do with it because now it's like I'm still with this person and she can still do it again, right? She could do it again. It's a trust situation that I have that I don't know what to do with it emotionally, right? So it's I don't know I don't know how to deal with it. It's still they're still hurt, right? I don't know if it's gonna go away. I'm obviously using this forum to expose it once again. But it's still there, right? It's still I didn't know that this person could be so strategic, so decisive. So I don't know. She presented another version of her that I've never seen before.
Yeah, good. That's a fantastic question. And let's bounce this around a few times. So you said basically you're aware and you're bringing it here to us. So you're shining a light on it. It's no longer hidden in the closet. That's the first step, right? You're aware of it. That's phenomenal. Jordan Peterson would say to zoom out. And what perspective do you have? Maybe you were naive to the evil potential of the world, or naive to our humanity being able to be that decisive and egoic and self-centered. And so had this, maybe you had a naivete. I certainly know that I had that in the past. So you're nodding. So that's a part of it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I was not aware of that behavior there. I fully trusted. I was naive and fully trusting, right? And to me, that's the bigger question, right? How can you retrust a person that already caused that pain, right? Is it healthy to do that?
Well, that's a really good question. And I would say you can never trust the person in the same naive way that you did in the past, because that's been exposed now. The curtain's been pulled back. That we've seen the Wizard of Oz, the little guy pulling the levers, and you can't unsee that. So no, you wouldn't want to go, well, unless you want to take, what is it, from the Matrix, right? You take the blue pill and you go back plugged into the Matrix and you become naive again, which we can't actually do. But would you really want to? Because then you'd be vulnerable to the same thing again, like a naive. So how can you trust? What does trust mean to you? Again, Jordan Peterson would say, what does trust actually mean in this new context? So zooming out, what does trust mean to you now, knowing that she has the capability? By the way, we all do. All humans have the capability of being a monster.
Right.
Man or woman. So with this new concept, what do you want? So what does trust mean and what do you want? So if the old relationship was at this level 1, surface, you want her body, she wants your money. I'm just giving an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want a deeper level 3 where you see each other's heart, where you trust, meaning trust that both of you want the same level of relationship. It's not trust that you're never going to get hurt. It's not trust that she would not be a monster if she wanted to be or needed to be. I would say, trust that you both want the same adventure, the same journey, the same level of depth. That's what the trusting for me would be. Not, I'm going to trust this person won't stand up for themselves. It's, I'm going to trust we're wanting to go to the same goal. So say more about that.
It. Well, you bring in a new perspective right now on trust, right? That sounds more enthusiastic, say, versus being hurt, right? Or continuing to remind myself of what the hurt that had happened, right?
That's right. So Jordan Peterson, the other piece is, how do you now feel that you're protecting yourself or have protected yourself from a similar type of vulnerability? You're not naive any longer. You're aware of it. You're bringing it here. And maybe you do something to protect yourself. And so that's a question for another time of, how do you do that? And not to squelch, but to be more real, to be more aware.
Right.
And let me ask Cynthia before we close out for today. Thank you. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about, to be a good man, you have to have the capacity for danger.
Mm.
You have to have the capacity to hurt. If an intruder comes in, you're going to stop that intruder by hurting the intruder, most likely. And you're not going to shy away from it because you're naive. So what is it about a woman that wants a man to not be naive? She wants him to have the capacity for violence if necessary, but she still wants him to be a good man in control. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, even the just what you said, the combination of she can feel that you're in control of your own monster, but will bring that out when it's needed for protection of the family, protection of the home. That's really attractive to the feminine because she feels very held and protected by you, but also that your edge is sharpened, as in she does not have to be aware to keep her eyes on the horizon of possible danger. Like you are the one who has the eyes for that. And then on the other side too, when we're talking about Jordan Peterson saying we all have the capacity, like you're bringing to the front, women have a massive monster side to them. We could call it evolutionary. We could call it their devouring mother energy, if you want to go archetypal. And that's in every woman. And part of what a woman can feel in you is that you're not naive to that in her. And your just awareness of that can actually be energizing to her on a emotional level, because she actually feels seen and seen by someone who has skill and sacred masculinity. Otherwise, she is doing a lot of holding down this maybe more ferocious side of her. And to me, this is kind of true level 3 relationship when you're both aware of that in each other. And she does it in a feminine way, you do it in a masculine way, but it's not unknown. To me, the unknown and the unrealized are the things that cause the most havoc and damage.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys same time next week. Thanks, Cynthia.